I built this company with blood and sweat. I never thought the poison would grow inside my own walls. And you're the rot. Monday mornings had a particular kind of silence at Helix Dynamics, not the peaceful kind. More like the heavy silence just before a storm. Phones rang gently in the background. The clack of keyboards echoed through the office floor. And the smell of burnt coffee lingered longer than it should have. Nathan Green, at least. That's what his ID badge said, pushed open the side entrance door with his shoulder, and stepped into the building like any other junior analyst would. Loose shirt, discount laptop bag, and a face no one noticed. But Nathan wasn't real. Behind the fake name, the dye-black hair, and the second-hand shoes, was Daniel Carter, the real CEO of Helix Dynamics, founder, visionary, and now undercover. He'd walked these halls for years as the man in charge, but lately, he barely recognized the place. Stories had started trickling in: good people being rejected for no reason, incompetent hires getting major roles, whispers about favoritism, and corruption. Daniel didn't want board reports or filtered summaries. He wanted the raw truth. So he stepped down quietly, told the board he needed a break, and walked back in through the front door in disguise. And today, he would see exactly what he was looking for. The morning felt normal at first. A few coworkers nodded as he passed by. Someone from the marketing team, Cassie, was already laughing too loud about something that probably wasn't funny. And Greg Mathers, the smooth-talking floor manager, stood near the coffee machine with his signature smug grin, sipping espresso like he owned the place. Greg had been promoted 3 years ago. Daniel remembered it clearly. On paper, Greg was sharp, efficient, and charismatic. But underneath, there had always been a strange smell of ambition turned sour. Daniel ignored it back then. Now, he regretted it. Around 10:30 a.m., Daniel stood at the far end of the office, feeding a jammed paper into the copier, when he noticed Greg disappearing into the HR meeting room. He wasn't alone. A man in a cheap suit followed him, eyes darting around like a thief checking for cameras. Something in Daniel's gut twisted quietly. He walked down the hallway, stopping just short of the frosted glass wall of the HR room. The door wasn't shut all the way, just a sliver open. Enough. Inside, Greg stood at the end of the conference table, arms crossed. The other man placed a white envelope on the table, thick, stuffed. No words were spoken for a moment, then Greg chuckled. This wasn't necessary, he said, picking up the envelope anyway. He didn't even open it, just slipped it into his jacket like it was routine. The man stammered. He really needs this job. Man, I swear he's good. Greg leaned in, smirking. Relax. He starts next week. It's done. Daniel froze. He'd hoped, maybe foolishly, that the rumors were wrong, that there was some misunderstanding. But there it was, right in front of him. A job, sold like a product. He took a step back, paper in hand, but something in him snapped. For a moment, the weight of all his sacrifices came crashing down. The late nights, the missed holidays, the anxiety attacks, the people he'd hired and fired, the culture he tried to build. And now, this. He looked through the gap in the door. Again, Greg was laughing with the man now, patting him on the shoulder like it was a game. Like people's futures were poker chips on a table. Daniel whispered to himself, voice low, shaky. I built this company with sleepless nights and bleeding hands. Never thought the poison would grow inside my own walls. And you sold it all for a damn envelope. He backed away, almost trembling. He needed air. No, he needed to document this. He pulled out the secure phone Jared had given him, tapped open the recording app and made a note. Greg Mathers, manager, caught accepting a bribe for hiring decision. 10:36 a.m., witnessed in HR room 80, as he stepped into the stairwell, breath shallow, the weight of what he'd seen pressed on his chest. It wasn't just Greg. If one was doing this, there were probably more. And if this had been going on for months, how many good people had been pushed out? He thought of Rachel, the woman from last week. Single mom, MBA, fluent in 3 languages. She cried in the parking lot after being told we went with someone else. Daniel had watched her leave that day with a resume full of gold and no job. And now it made sense. Rachel didn't have a friend with an envelope. He punched the wall just once. Not hard enough to break anything, just hard enough to feel it. Stared out the window. The city looked so normal. People rushing to jobs they hoped would mean something. People like Rachel. Like he once was. He pulled out his phone again and added one more note. I'm not walking away from this. Not this time. Behind him, the office buzzed like nothing happened. But everything had just changed. The next few days blurred together like a slow-motion train wreck Daniel couldn't stop watching. Every morning, he walked in through the side door, wearing the same expressionless face, the same budget-bought sneakers, and a silence that made him invisible. He listened more than he spoke. That's how rats expose themselves, and they were everywhere. Greg Mathers, of course, kept playing the perfect manager stern in meetings, smooth in conversations, always cracking the right joke at the right time. But behind his charm was a trail of quiet deals and suspicious hires. 2 days after Daniel witnessed the bribe, a new face appeared on the floor. Tyler Adams, supposedly a junior tech analyst, hired based on potential, Greg claimed in the morning huddle. But within hours, it was obvious Tyler barely knew how to open Excel without Googling it first. When Daniel casually asked him about past experience, Tyler grinned and said, "Doesn't really matter when you know the right people, right?" He even winked. Daniel forced a smile but felt his stomach twist. That envelope Greg took. This was the result. Tyler got a company laptop, a shiny desk, and a passcode to sensitive internal databases by noon. By evening, he was already flirting with Cassie from marketing like he owned the place. Meanwhile, Rachel up again, not as an employee, but as a desperate visitor. Daniel was returning from the basement storage room when he saw her in the lobby, talking to a board receptionist. She wore the same navy blue blazer from her last interview, holding a folder tight to her chest like it was a shield. "I just wanted to ask if there's been any change in the hiring status," she said softly. "You said you'd keep me in mind." The receptionist didn't even look up. "Sorry if you didn't hear back. It probably means it didn't work out. You can check the portal again." Rachel smiled weakly. "Right, of course, thank you." She turned and walked out with her head down. Daniel stood in the hallway frozen. He wanted to call her name, wanted to run out and tell her the truth. That it wasn't her qualifications. It wasn't her performance. It was simply this: she didn't pay. But he couldn't blow his cover. Not yet. Later that day in the break room, he ran into Kyle. Kyle was in HR mid-30s, quiet, serious. The kind of guy who actually read company policies and believed in them. Daniel had always liked him during his real CEO days, mostly because Kyle never cared about kissing up. He just did his job. Kyle nodded toward the new hires on the floor. "Lot of fast decisions lately," he muttered. "Candidates with red flags flying through the process." Daniel played dumb. "You mean ... like what?" "Background gaps. Missing certifications. One guy didn't even upload a proper resume, just a LinkedIn link with no history. Still got hired." Kyle lowered his voice. "Greg's been pushing them through. I flagged it once. Got told to stay in my lane." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You think something's going on?" Kyle looked him over carefully, then smiled, just a little. "I think something's always going on. Most people just don't want to see it." Daniel felt a strange pang in his chest. Maybe Kyle saw more than he let on. Maybe he didn't buy the Nathan act fully. Either way, he was clearly someone who still gave a damn. That night Daniel sat alone in the storage room, flipping through printed resumes he'd quietly pulled from the HR shred bin, some rejected, some ignored, some just tossed away. Rachel's was in the pile. MBA from Stanford. 5 years at a consulting firm. Volunteer work. Clean record. No reason none to be passed over. He pulled out a pen and scribbled on her resume. Deserved better. Then he took a photo and added it to the secure folder he was building. Helix_dynamics_truth. The evidence was piling up: names, dates, faces, and envelopes full of secrets. Every entry he added felt like a knife twist to his heart, because each one wasn't just proof of corruption. It was a reminder of how far his dream had fallen. He remembered the early days of Helix, working from his garage, building software on 2 hours of sleep, pitching to investors with stubble on his chin and fire in his chest. He built this place to give people chances, to reward hard work, to change something now. It was just another machine that crushed people like Rachel and lifted people like Tyler for the right price. As he stared at the screen, Kyle's words echoed in his head. Most people just don't want to see it. Daniel saw it now. All of it. And it was only getting worse. 3 weeks into his undercover role, Daniel could feel the weight of the lie grinding down on him, wearing the same fake name and forced silence. Every day was no longer just an act, it was a chain. Watching Greg strut around like the king of the floor, high on his own deceit, made Daniel's fists clench under the desk. It was during a Wednesday team meeting that the final line was crossed. Greg stood at the front of the room, sleeves rolled up, tie loose, trying to play relatable. "Boss, so, I know you've all been working hard," he said, hands on hips. "Which is why I've handpicked someone special to lead the new operations trial team." He gestured to the back. Tyler grinned and stood up like he was accepting an Oscar. Half the room clapped politely. The other half, the ones who worked, looked confused. Daniel kept his face neutral. But inside, something snapped. Tyler, leading a team, after submitting one report late, another filled with basic errors, and spending most of his time flirting with Cassie or scrolling TikTok after the meeting. Daniel stood by the water cooler when he overheard the worst of it. Rachel's name again. "She applied for that team lead role too," someone said quietly. "No way," another voice responded. "She's 10 times more qualified." But Greg said she didn't fit the profile. Whatever that means. Daniel turned, and for a brief second, his eyes met Kyle's across the floor. Kyle looked unsettled. He didn't speak, but his gaze lingered like he'd seen too much, and couldn't unsee it anymore. That evening, Daniel waited until the floor cleared, then headed straight to the security office. The guard barely looked up. Daniel had built this company to be low bureaucracy. It worked in his favor now. "Mind if I check room for footage?" he asked casually. Greg said to double-check some supply stuff. The guard grunted and pulled up the HR room cameras. Daniel leaned in, keeping his voice casual. "Can you go back to last Thursday? Around 10, just curious." Click, click, then, there it was. Greg, sitting casually, envelope on the table. Another man nervously pushing it forward. No audio, but the body language said it all. Daniel took out his secure phone and snapped a few frames. Later that night, he added the clip to his growing archive, /evidence_bribe3.mov. He stared at the screen for a long time. Each clip, each note, each shattered dream, and behind every one of them, Greg's face. The man who used to send Daniel happy Founders Day messages every year. The man who once said, "Working under you has been the honor of my life." Daniel whispered under his breath, just one sentence. "Liar." The next day brought a storm of its own. Kyle approached him quietly in the hallway. No greetings, just a direct, sharp whisper. "Rachel's quitting." Daniel blinked. "What? Why?" Kyle looked exhausted. "She came to me crying, said she's tired of being invisible. Said this place was supposed to be a step up, not another slap in the face." Daniel felt something crack deep in his chest. He found Rachel near the back staircase, wiping her eyes with a tissue, her resignation letter already folded in her hand. He couldn't say anything as a CEO. Not yet. Not without blowing everything, so he walked up, pretending to be nobody. "Rough day?" he asked gently. She laughed, bitter and tired. "Just a rough couple years, honestly." He stood beside her, quiet for a moment. "You're one of the smartest people I've seen here," he said carefully. "You don't deserve this." She glanced at him, surprised. "Thanks. I worked so hard, you know? Believed in merit, believed in fairness." Daniel's throat tightened. He couldn't lie anymore, she continued. "It's like, if you don't play the game, you're already out." He wanted to scream, to throw open the office doors, and fire Greg on the spot, but not yet. Instead, he just nodded and said softly, "I'm sorry this place didn't see you." She walked away, and Daniel stood there alone, furious and trembling. That night he added one final voice note to his archive. His voice, raw, cracked on the edge. "Tyler's now leading a team. Rachel is leaving. Greg just made his 5th dirty hire in under a month, and I'm done watching this from the shadows. One more mistake from him. Just one. And I ripped the mask off, in the darkness of the storage room, with the hum of the air conditioning and the flicker of cheap ceiling lights. Daniel made up his mind. Next time Greg slipped, he was ending this. It happened faster than Daniel expected. By the time Friday rolled around, the whole office floor was buzzing, but not because of a new deal or a successful quarter. It was the damn cake that triggered everything. Someone in HR decided to throw a surprise welcome to the team lead family party for Tyler balloons, cupcakes, a printed banner on cheap glossy paper. Daniel stood in the back of the room, watching as Tyler fumbled through a thank you speech he clearly hadn't prepared. I just want to thank Greg for seeing my potential, you know. Like, it's easy to get overlooked when you don't have all the paperwork and stuff, but sometimes what matters is knowing the right person who gets you. The room clapped politely, mechanically. Some even laughed. Daniel didn't. He looked at Kyle standing off to the side. Kyle wasn't clapping either. After the party, Daniel walked to the bathroom, gripping the sink with both hands, like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His jaw was clenched, his pulse in his ears. His company was being passed out like samples at a grocery store. Not based on talent, not on merit, just on greed and fake loyalty. And then, as he walked out of the bathroom, it happened. Greg was in the hallway, talking to someone. His back was turned, but the other man, older mid-50s, visitor badge on his coat, froze. When he saw Daniel walking past, he squinted. You're not Nathan." Greg turned around. "What?" The man stepped forward. "You're Daniel Carter. You gave a speech at Stanford 6 years ago. I was there. You said, never hire someone you wouldn't trust with your bank account. That was you." Greg's eyes widened. Daniel froze, caught in the middle of the hallway like a deer under a spotlight. He opened his mouth, but it was too late. Greg laughed, a cold, sharp, nervous sound. Well, guess we've had a ghost among us." Silence, people. Nearby stopped typing. Phones stopped ringing. A few heads turned. Kyle stood at his desk, eyes wide, staring at Daniel. Greg took a step forward, smirking. "I should have known." The quiet little analyst with all the questions. Daniel didn't deny it. He stepped forward, calm, centered, but boiling inside. "Yeah," he said, "you should have." Greg laughed again, louder this time. "What? Now? You going to report me? To yourself?" Daniel's voice was cold. "No, Greg, I already have." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small black USB. "I've been recording every conversation, every shady hire, every envelope, every lie." The color drained from Greg's face. "Bullshit." Daniel tilted his head. "Want to see the footage of you in room 4 with an envelope full of cash? Or the one with the cousin you hired with no resume?" Greg charged forward, grabbing Daniel's arm. "You've been spying." "I've been watching," Daniel snapped, shoving him back, "because I had to see how bad the rot had spread." People were crowding now, whispers, gasps. Kyle had already pulled out his phone. The HR manager, Janine, came running. "What's going on?" Greg spun around, shouting. "He's not supposed to be here. He's impersonating someone else." Daniel took a deep breath. His voice came low and thunderous. "I own this building." Silence. "I own every desk, every code base, every damn ceiling tile in here. And I trusted you, Greg. I believed in second chances. I believed in loyalty." His voice cracked, slightly raw, emotional. "But you didn't just take money. You sold off pieces of people's lives. For favors. For shortcuts. You made this place a joke." Greg looked around. No one backed him, not even Cassie. Not even Tyler. Daniel turned to the HR manager. "Janine, lock Greg's accounts. Effective immediately. Full audit starts today. I want legal in my office within the hour." She blinked. Yes, yes, sir." Greg started stammering, stepping back. You can't do this. You don't have proof." Daniel stared him down. "I've got enough proof to bury your career and blacklist you from every serious company on the coast." He turned to the crowd. "I walked among you. I listened. I watched good people get stepped on. That ends today." Kyle finally stepped forward, speaking loud and clear. About damn time. Daniel nodded. Yeah, it is. Security arrived 5 minutes later. Greg didn't fight, he didn't scream. He just looked at Daniel as they walked him out. But Daniel didn't look back. Instead, he walked over to Rachel's empty desk, picked up the resignation letter still lying there and tore it in half. Someone find her, he said. Tell her she's not going anywhere. Monday morning came with a storm, not from the sky, but from the inboxes of every department head, manager, and HR rep at Helix Dynamics. The subject line was short, brutal, and clear. Immediate internal audit. CEO directive read. Now Daniel didn't walk into the building like Nathan this time. He walked in wearing the CEO badge. Tailored navy suit, shoulders square, eyes locked forward. Employees stood straighter when he passed. Whispers spread like wildfire across the floor. Is it true? That was him this whole time. Did Greg really? He was one of us. But Daniel didn't stop to explain. He marched into the boardroom with Jared, the company's general counsel, and Kyle, now seated at the executive table beside him. In front of them, the evidence: every audio file, every time-stamped video, every corrupted resume, every transaction tied to under-the-table hiring decisions. Daniel clicked a button. The first clip played, Greg laughing while accepting cash from a desperate cousin. It echoed across the room. Like a confession in a church, Jared spoke first. Legally, we have enough to press charges: multiple counts of bribery, abuse of position, and internal fraud. At least 5 hires are tied to payments or favors. Kyle added some of the candidates who were rejected. They were the best in the pool. We lost talent, reputation. Daniel didn't blink. We lost ourselves. That's what hurts the most. He stood, facing the window for a moment. The city looked the same, but everything inside Helix had changed. Trusted Greg, Daniel said. I let him grow here. I let him become something. And he used my silence as permission. He turned back to the table. No more silence. By noon, the rest of the company knew. The official email hit every employee inbox: Greg Mathers has been terminated for ethics violations. An independent team is reviewing all recent hiring decisions. If you were impacted or have concerns, please come forward. You will be heard. You will be protected. And they did come forward. One by one, employees who had stayed silent out of fear or hopelessness finally spoke. Emails flooded in from former candidates who never understood why they were rejected. Someone even sent in a screen recording of Tyler joking in a group chat: bro, this job cost me a night out and a handshake with Greg. Best investment ever. It was over. Greg's house of lies didn't just collapse, exploded. 2 local news outlets picked up the story after a whistleblower blog published an anonymous tip. The headline was brutal. Tech manager sold jobs for cash while CEO watched from within. Rachel returned. Daniel personally called her. When she walked into the office again, she looked different: still quiet, still graceful, but stronger. He met her by the lobby, hand extended. I never got to welcome you properly, Daniel said. Let me fix that. Rachel looked unsure. I don't know if I belong here anymore. You do, he said. More than anyone. He walked her to her new office and upgraded desk. A new title, Senior Project Lead, a real shot. I don't expect you to forget what happened, he added. But I hope you'll help us rebuild. Rachel blinked, then nodded slowly. I will. That evening, Daniel stood on the rooftop balcony with Kyle and Jared. The city lights blinked below them. The air finally felt lighter. I almost gave up, Daniel admitted. I almost let this company drift into the same corrupt mess I built it to fight against. Kyle lit a cigarette and shrugged. But you didn't. You stayed. You listened. Daniel looked down at the security badge still clipped to his suit. I became a ghost in my own company, he said quietly. But maybe that's what it took. To see the truth? Jared smiled faintly. And now, Daniel exhaled slowly. Now we start over. 3 months later, Helix Dynamics was no longer the same company. Gone were the old banners, the tired mission statements, and the whisper network of shady promotions. The air in the office was different, now fresher, honest. You could feel it even in the little things, Like how people looked up from their desks when someone walked past, or how no one whispered when they thought no one was listening. Greg Mathers was under investigation. The police had raided his home office. Bank records, burner phones, and even a spreadsheet labeled promised slots were found on his personal laptop. His trial was scheduled for the end of the quarter. Daniel didn't attend the press conferences. He let the legal team speak for the company. He had other work to do. Rebuilding trust. The first thing he did was launch the Fair Entry Program, an internal watchdog initiative co-led by Kyle and Rachel. It gave employees and applicants a direct, confidential path to report any unfair treatment, favoritism, or discrimination. No gatekeeping, no filters, no excuses. The second thing he did, he apologized in person to every single employee who had been overlooked, overruled, or outright ignored. He sat across from them, one by one. No scripts, no PR handler. Just him, humbled. Some forgave him. Some didn't. He accepted both. And then came the final change. The one no one saw coming. Daniel gathered his executive team in the newly remodeled boardroom. Fresh paint, open windows, no more cold leather chairs. Just real people, around a table that mattered again. He stood at the head of it one last time. I started this company because I believed in second chances, he said. But I forgot to give myself one. He took out a folder. Inside was his letter of transition. I'm stepping down as CEO, permanently. Murmurs rose around the room. Jared leaned forward. You sure about this? Daniel smiled, but there was pain behind it, and peace. This company needs new energy. Fresh leadership. People who understand the ground because they've stood on it. Not just looked down from above. He nodded toward Rachel. Effective immediately, Rachel D'Souza will be acting Chief Operations Officer. And Kyle Brooks will take over as head of internal ethics. Rachel was speechless. Her lips parted but no words came out. Daniel grinned. You earned this the hard way. She stood up, still stunned. You were right, you know. That day in the stairwell, he looked at her. You said, they didn't see me. She nodded. But you did. Later that evening, Daniel stood alone on the rooftop again. This time, he wasn't hiding. He was watching the sun dip behind the skyline, casting golden streaks over the building he once bled for. Jared joined him quietly. You really going to walk away? I'm not walking away, Daniel said. I'm letting go. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper, his original resignation letter, the one he almost submitted months ago when he first considered going. Undercover, he unfolded it, smiled at the dated language, then tore it down the middle. Good riddance, he said. The next morning, he walked out of Helix Dynamics for the last time, not as a CEO, not as an undercover analyst, but as a man who saw what was broken and chose to fix it. Not with press releases, not with boardroom speeches, but by becoming a ghost in his own machine and bringing light back into the cracks as the doors closed behind him. Someone called his name. It was Rachel. She held the elevator for him, smiling. You ever need a job, she said, come apply. He laughed. I'll bring a real resume. This time. They shook hands and then, Daniel Carter disappeared into the city. No title. No badge. No office. Just a legacy finally worth leaving behind. If this story hit you deep, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more powerful tales that cut through the noise. Your support helps bring more hidden truths to light, one story at a time.